Hello, everyone. Let's take a look at the week two study questions. Again, I want to explain why I do these review videos for the study questions, and that's because I do not respond individually to your study question submissions. Rather, what I do is talk through the study questions, indicate what I consider to be the correct answers, and then it's up to you to compare what I say here with your own answers. And if there is a significant difference, or if it becomes clear to you that your answer just wasn't what I was thinking of, it's up to you to clarify it for yourself. And I should say that one of the things you can do is contact me by email or by phone at the contacts that I've given you to discuss the matter. So it's really on you to watch these videos and to compare with your own responses so you know that you're on the right track. So, number one, what definition of death does Socrates begin with? Very important. The definition that he begins with is that death is the separation of soul and body. That's the beginning point for his theory of death. Why does he think that the philosopher should welcome death? Well, that is something that is actually a very difficult matter, and that it involves us with all sorts of questions. And I would remind you that what I've given you is a short excerpt from a long dialogue, which is devoted to this matter. He thinks that the philosopher should welcome death because he believes that only in death, that is, only after the soul separates from the body, does the philosopher get what they really want, which is knowledge. Plato is committed to the idea that true knowledge, absolute knowledge, real knowledge, you might say, is only possible after death. Now, this leads to two very important questions, which we really don't have time to go into too much because we can't read the whole dialogue. We don't have time. One is, why is it that true knowledge is only possible after death? Well, he indicates that true knowledge is only possible once we get away from the burden of our senses. And by that means sight, hearing, touch, etc., which he believes obscures knowledge or obscure knowledge. And the soul, when it's off on its own and can be with the entities that he considers to be reality, what he calls the ideas or forms, the soul, unburdened of, let's say, the chains of the prison house of the body that brings with it the senses, it's only then that the soul can see truth clearly for the first time. Now, that is one issue that is a complicated issue. But the second one is, well, how do we know that the soul even can exist after it's separated from the body? That is, couldn't it be that the soul is dependent upon body for its existence? So after this separation, the soul simply dies, goes out of existence, just as the body does. I would say that that's the central question of the rest of the dialogue, is him trying to prove that the soul can exist and does exist independent of the body after death. So, but the answer to that question, why does he think that the philosopher should welcome death? Because then the philosopher can get true knowledge for the first time. Number two, what is Epicurus's conception of death? Well, Epicurus's conception of death is that death is the permanent taking away of all awareness and consciousness, as he, in our translation, calls it the privation of all awareness. So at death, we become nothing, and there is no continued experience after death. We are annihilated at death. Why is it incompatible with the one Socrates espouses? Well, clearly, because Socrates believes that the soul continues to exist after death. Socrates defines death as a separation of soul and body, and at least in the beginning of the dialogue, presupposes that the soul continues in existence after that separation. So he doesn't view death as the absolute end or the end of all consciousness, as Epicurus does. He views death as a transition to a new state of being for the soul. Number three, in teaching 2, Krishna argues that Arjuna should not be upset about killing the soldiers in the opposing army. Why? Well, that might have different answers, but I think the central answer, and certainly the answer that's most important for us, is that he's not really killing them, according to Krishna. He's killing their bodies, but that's not who they really are. Who they really are, and who we, every one of us, really is what Krishna calls a self, and that self is eternal. It's much like the soul that I think that Plato is discussing in the Phaedo. So I think that what Krishna is trying to do for Arjuna is provide him with some perspective. That is, that the killing of a human being in battle is not the end of that human being, in the sense that, yes, it's the end of the body that self is incarnated in, but you can't kill the self. The self will go on. So Arjuna, for whatever else we may say, is thinking of this thing wrong, because he's thinking that when he kills these people, that's it for them. But Krishna is trying to tell him that that's not it for them. The soul is eternal, or the self is eternal. So that's what I had in mind this week. Again, the rationale for these videos is that you will compare your own answers with what I say here. And if you feel like you're on the wrong track when you compare them, I really strongly urge you to get in touch with me.